Good afternoon, I'm Sarit Zehavi from the Alma Center here in northern Israel. Last Saturday, Israel managed to prevent a terrorist attack that was planned by the Iranians from Syria. This terrorist attack was planned and directly commanded by Qasem Soleimani. Qasem Soleimani is a very important figure in Syria today. He is the head of Al-Quds force, which is subordinate to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, and he directly wanted to create a game-changer operation against Israel. Some would say in order to retaliate Israeli attacks against Iranian military infrastructures in Iraq. IDF published a video that was filmed on Thursday where you can see few Hezbollah operatives coming very close to the Israeli-Syrian border with a drone in their hands. They were probably planning to carry out the attack that day, but IDF managed to prevent that. Later on Saturday, when the IDF understood that the attack is going to be immediately, they targeted the villa in Aqaba, which is a small town next to Damascus, where Hezbollah operatives were staying, and maybe a few more Iranians and Syrians due to the reports in Syria, and killed them. Why is this incident so interesting? Israel has been fighting in Syria and attacking Iranian and Hezbollah military infrastructures in Syria in the past few years. But this incident developed into completely something different. First, in this incident, for the first time, two Hezbollah operatives were killed. Hezbollah operatives, but actually that were directed and even commanded by the Iranians themselves. These two were trained in Iran. The IDF supplies photos of them flying to Iran to get training for this attack. And when they came back to Damascus or to areas next to Damascus, they were ready or prepared to carry out the attack. Both of them are Lebanese, living in South Lebanon, and are sons of employees of El Manar TV station, which is the TV station of Hezbollah. So we can understand that these two guys are coming from prominent families of Hezbollah. Few hours after the attack in Damascus, two explosive drones crashed in Beirut. They caused a little bit of damage in Hezbollah media center. The Lebanese Prime Minister immediately blamed Israel. Yet, these drones are not Israeli drones. As you can see these photos, these drones look like the drones that are being used in Syria by Iran or maybe even by ISIS. I want us to pay attention to a small but important detail. The IDF said that the two terrorists that were killed were part of the Quds force. Yet Nasrallah said that these were Hezbollah operatives. Moreover, the incident in Beirut of the two drones that crashed on Hezbollah media center actually kind of give Nasrallah an excuse to attack Israel, not only from the Syrian border, but maybe also from the Lebanese border, and as Nasrallah said in his speech, not specifically from areas of dispute like Sheba farms. After these incidents, Nasrallah gave a speech to his people. By the way, the speech was planned in advance, maybe in order to speak to the Lebanese and to speak to Hezbollah operatives after a successful attack against Israel. But plans are one thing and reality is another thing, and Nasrallah had to change the speech and now address after these two incidents in Beirut and next to Damascus. In his speech, Nasrallah threatens to attack Israel, and for the first time to attack Israel also from the Lebanese border. After the attack, there were a lot of pressures on the Lebanese government to stop Hezbollah from retaliation against Israel. Nasrallah addressed this in his speech and implies that even if the Lebanese government will refrain from any retaliation against Israel, Hezbollah is obliged to do that, since for the first time Hezbollah operatives were killed in Syria. There is a debate inside Israel whether Nasrallah's speech are just words or maybe behind it there are also deeds. Some say that it is clear that Nasrallah is under pressure, that Nasrallah is under pressure since the sanctions against Hezbollah and Iran, since he failed to carry out a terrorist attack against Israel. Others would say that these threats are for real. I'm with those who say that these threats are for real, and I guess that the IDF also take Nasrallah threats very seriously, and that's why, I don't know if you've heard, we hear airplanes above us all the time, and IDF raised the alert of the IDF forces along the Israeli-Lebanese border. So here I want to speak about few insights about these incidents. First, well, we can say that now when we speak about the Israeli strategy, we are at the fourth stage regarding the Syrian border. What do I mean? At first, we had 40 years of quietness on the Israeli-Syrian border, from 1973, after the Yom Kippur War, until 2013. Then came the civil war, and Israel had to adapt and created the beautiful project of the good neighbor with the humanitarian assistance to the people on the other side, and managed to keep the border relatively calm, relatively to what happened on the other side of the border and the civil war on the other side of the border, and the fact that there were many small hostile groups on the other side of the border. Then came the third stage, which after the rebels lost, and Iran and Hezbollah were gradually trying to take over the borderline between Israel and Syria, and Israel was trying to put a lot of efforts to prevent that, not only kinetic efforts, but also diplomatic efforts by conversations with the Russians and the Americans. And now we are at the fourth stage, while the IDF is putting a lot of efforts again and again and again to fight the Iranian already existing military presence in Syria. New fronts are being created, and Iran is trying to transfer some of its military assets into Iraq and to create a ground corridor in Iraq that will go from Tehran through Iraq and Damascus all the way to Beirut. And I guess that the $1 million question is whether, when I'm saying new fronts, we would also have to include Lebanon, which until today, in the past 13 years, was not part of the game. To my assessment, Iran is trying to drag the region into war in the past year and a half. It started from the riots at the Israeli-Gazian border with Hamas. Later on, we've seen direct orders to the Palestinian Islamic Jihad to launch rockets that will endanger Israeli civilians, either to Tel Aviv, a few days ago, to Sderot, maybe as a retaliation to what happened in Damascus, and of course this plan of attack with the drones from Syria. This is the gap between Hezbollah and its Iranian boss. Hezbollah is more cautious, more pragmatic, and it's not interested in war against Israel right now. As long as Hezbollah will believe that it cannot win the war against Israel, it will not initiate an all-out war against Israel. Hezbollah remembers what happened in 2006. It remembers the damages to Lebanon and the damages to Hezbollah itself. And that's why I think that the main question remains whether an escalation on the Israeli-Lebanese border will take us into war that nobody is actually interested in.